Okay, we're recording.
We are recording. All right, this is episode number 5. We got one more to go. And today we got myself, we got Jimmy, we got Jason, I'm Bronson, and we're going to be talking about building habits, right? Something about that.
Yeah.
And I look over, I'm not even thinking about it. I'm looking over because Jason's right next to me.
It's a good thing I'm not out there because it'd be worse.
Right? Because so we've talked about a lot of stuff over the past, think about it. It's been a month, right? It's been a month. From a perspective of lifestyle, stress, diabetes, fitness, being fit, all the different habits and lifestyles, and all these things that come into play with maintaining a routine and a lifestyle of health and fitness and having a mindset around what that means. So I guess we should talk about some things that people can do to actually start integrating some of these things into their life and building habits and routines around the ideas we've been talking about for the past month to actually move forward. So I guess to start off, we just talk about like what is a habit? How do we develop habits? And what's the driving force, behind the routines that we kind of build each around our lifestyle each day? Like, what are some of the habits that we have, I guess, that we don't even think about? Because I think that's probably the biggest factor when it comes to changing routines and changing things in your life. We have habits we don't even know we have. So that might actually be the best place to start is talking about what's the process of identifying things in our lives that are things we do that are maybe detrimental to our health that we don't even think about. Right? Because I know there's definitely plenty of things out there. What do you got, Jason?
So I think that answering that question first starts with identifying your values. What is like Paul Chek, one of my mentors, talks about what does happiness making mean to you, and identifying what's important to you, whoever's listening to this, and prioritizing those values in order of sort of most necessary to least necessary. And that, by the way, I don't mean like necessary from other people's perspective. I mean, you by yourself, no one's around, you don't have to answer anyone but yourself. What is most important to you? And then once you have a clear idea of what's valuable to you in your life, then it becomes much easier to start identifying behaviors that can form into habits. Habits are just repeated behaviors that a person is performing, and frankly, it doesn't even necessarily need to be a positive effect. Plenty of people have habits that actually are detrimental to their health and their values.
Right.
But those same people tend to also not have taken the time to be introspective and be clear on what happiness making means to them and what their values actually are.
Yeah, and that's where I wanted to get to is like how do we help guys go through that process of introspection and kind of say, what are the things in my life that I'm doing that aren't supporting my health, my vision, or my mental image of what I want to be or where I want to be in life. And obviously, I think one is figuring out what that is. Like, what is it about your life? And I've said this before, is sometimes it's hard to identify or talk about your why or what it is you want. So sometimes you can do the opposite of that and identify the things you don't like about your life. What are the negatives in my life? And then use those as your goals that you want to fix, or your goals that motivate you to make a change. So if you can't think of anything, there's some grand vision. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but if you can't think of a grand vision of here's what I want my life to look like, well, what don't you want your life to look like? What are the things in your life that you want to get rid of? And then what are the things that you're doing that are making those things happen? I think that could be a process as well. Jimmy, what do you have to add to that? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, you got me. I popped out
Yep.
there for just a hot second. I mean, habits, again, we're just kind of identifying kind of like what habits are, and then what we feel as the most important, and we kind of prioritize. We work our way down. A lot of times people's mental health and physical health are not on the top of that list. You know, they put everybody else in front of theirs. And that's usually what happens, especially when you have family, when you have your partner, kids, you know, your health and wellness might become second, especially depending on how new you are to your family or fatherhood in this case, because we're all talking to men. So I'm relating because I didn't prioritize my fitness, and it was really troublesome for my mental health. Like needing to work out and release hormones on a very routine basis. And I didn't do that. It was a big influx of other feelings that, of anxiety and depression, and almost like feeling like you're losing, touch with that side of your body, that side of you. And that was tough.
Yeah. That's a perfect example of a combination of how mindset transfers into the actions that you take, which are the habits. So if you have a mindset of, I need, particularly like you said, new fathers have the mindset of this kid is the most important thing, and doing things for my family becomes a priority. So my mindset and my focus is shifted, which then starts creating a habit of putting other things in front of myself. So you now got a cycle, always putting yourself second, and then that can be a detriment. So changing that habit to something that says, hey, I got to change my mindset to, yes, my family is important. Yes, I need to do things to take care of my kids, and I need to focus on doing stuff on the family side. But if my cup is full, then I don't have the energy and I don't have the capacity to do that 100%. So the mindset can then change into an action of habit to help you build yourself, which you can then take into the family. That's cool.
That's absorbing everybody. I mean, you look at people in our environment, there are always people watching, and they assume, and their perspective is their reality of what they see. So like if you don't have to, boast yourself and say, oh, I do this, I do that, just show it, just do it, and just perform it. Be the one that takes action. Don't be the one that talks about what they do. Just do it, and let that be an example. I think we have a lot of times that we really kind of sometimes do the opposite, where we really just kind of verbalize things, but then again, it's not performed or not taken into action or applied. And that's where things get missing. That's where things go lost. So yes, having like the priorities, but again, and starting those based on who you are, based on time, based on where you feel you can be the most effective, identify what those are. And again, that's what we're talking about is our values, and what we find is going to be the best and most identical for us.
Right. No, good.
Something, and I don't know if this is the right place to talk about this, but I'm going to bring it up anyhow. Time. It bothers me when people use time as a defense,
an excuse
for doing or not doing something, because the truth is everybody has 24 hours a day, and we get to decide what we're going to do with it. Sure, some people's lives are more challenging than others, particularly if in a period of history like now, where maybe more people are trying to meet their most basic survival needs than ever before. But at the end of the day, we all have the same exact time. And so I'm not a fan of people trying to throw that into the conversation as if it's a reason to not, go through the process of identifying our values and not begin the process of trying to create healthy habits.
Yeah. I think the time excuse is an example of somebody not being honest with themselves and taking that time to be introspective and open with themselves, right? It's an excuse. It's an easy thing to say. And to me, it just shows that they haven't taken the time to really evaluate and be honest with where their priorities stand. Because there's no right or wrong answer.
Right.
There's no judgment if someone says, I don't have, I'm not working out right now is not my priority in life. That's perfectly fine. You don't need to justify it. I'm not going to judge you, Jason, Jimmy. No one's going to judge you for that. Now, if you're complaining about being overweight and not having energy and being weak and motivated, and you're complaining about aspects of your life that exercising or eating right can make a change and a difference, then you say, I don't have the time. No, now we know there's a cognitive dissonance there. Something's not matched up. You can't complain about A, say you don't have time to do the result, to do the things that's going to fix A, right? So one or the other has to be the thing. If you don't like it, but right now you've got other things that are priority, and you can say, be honest with yourself and say, I'm not happy with my body right now. I'm not happy with my fitness, but I understand that there are other things in my life, and I want to plan. I need a roadmap, or I need to come up with some way that eventually I can start addressing this. That's a different conversation than just dismissing it altogether and saying I don't have time, and then not worrying about it, right? Because that's self-defeating. It just doesn't help at all. Be honest with yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing, is taking responsibility and having that responsibility, saying that I'm responsible for my choices, and not giving power to other things where the excuses fall into play. You make the choice, you make the story in your head. So, and that's the thing.
And be okay. And be okay with it.
I'm just identify
okay.
like, boom.
Yeah.
You're right. That is what it is. Instead of getting defensive, instead of getting like combative, especially when somebody calls you out on your BS, just, what? You're right. Case in point, Jason's like, hey man, you got to fill out the COVID waiver when you come into the gym. I'm like,
I got to do that.
I haven't done it.
I got to do that. I'm going to do that right now.
It's kind of like, it's simplistic as that. Like you do the things you say you're going to do. It's the small things that matter, and everything, starts to kind of compound itself. Jason and I had a really, heart-to-heart conversation a few months ago, about some business stuff, and it was like, we finished the actual conversation with a hug, to be honest. We hugged it out. We're like, dude, you're right. We need to get back in the alignment and get back into integrity, because if things are out of line, then everything else in your life starts to go down that trend. So it's the small things. Yeah. So if you let it slip a little bit, things have to happen. And just like Bronson, what you said with Jocko Willett, discipline is freedom. He says that a lot. So you have discipline in things in your life, and then again, you take responsibility.
Yeah, that's the responsibility piece is huge, because nothing works. None of this stuff we've been talking about for the past month works if you're not doing it through a lens of being responsible for your own direction.
Yep.
And your own outcomes.
I even take it to the extreme, and I honestly find it helps me a lot in my life. Like a good concrete example is, the gym since March has been struggling so much that I don't even have a salary from my own business anymore. And, there are a lot of people in my shoes who are blaming the government, blaming, politicians, blaming, powers outside of themselves for this, scenario. But I actually look at it as it's all my fault. It's all my problem, right? Like, so, whether or not external factors contributed to it is sort of irrelevant to me. It's irrelevant to me because everything is my fault in my life, no matter who or what is involved outside of it. And that is a very empowering perspective to have in my life, and is definitely not something I had 10 years ago, for sure.
Yeah. Which leads to the part that I like. If anybody's interested in a good book to read, there's a book called The Power of Habits that I highly recommend everybody in the world read. It's a really good breakdown of how we build habits, how we maintain, and how we can change and install new habits into our routine. And one of the things he said in this book that really struck me is basically that habits, most of the habits in our lives, most of the things that we do day to day that we don't think about, because that's what a habit is, things that we do that we're not consciously thinking about. Most of the things that we've developed in our lives that are habits are born out of necessity or environment or actions that we haven't thought about. We're not deliberate about them. They just happen because we needed to do something for a time or whatever, and then we started doing that, and then that just kind of kept going because we weren't being conscious. So in order to change your habits, you have to be deliberate and understand why you have them and if they're helping, and then what you need to do to change them. So it's a deliberate process. If you're not taking action, like you said, Jimmy, if you're not doing something actively to change them, then it's not going to happen. You're not going to get where you want to be. So you got to take that responsibility.
Right.
The other thing that he said is, and this is where this is applicable. I know this is something that I've dealt with in the last couple of years, in the last year particularly, is that most of the habits we develop unconsciously work great in our lives until stress is applied. Until things go bad, until something is not going well in your life, you don't realize that you developed a habit that's not helpful. And that can be a habit in communication with a friend, with a family member. That can be a habit in how you handle issues in your business. That can be a habit in the frequency or something applied to your fitness, nutrition. Maybe you have a nutrition thing that is a habit that you didn't realize is causing a problem until it causes a problem. Then you have to be deliberate about figuring out what it is that is the issue. So we have a lot of habits that we build into our lives that if we don't address them, identify them, take some of those steps to be introspective, when it comes time to it, we're going to be surprised at how messed up things get because we never thought about that scenario or that situation. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about and I'm going to pull this right from this book that I was just talking about, The Power of Habits. He breaks habits down into three pieces. There is the cue, the reward, and the routine. So the routine, I think we don't need to talk about too much. That is basically how the habit fits into your daily life, and it supports itself. So habits support themselves, in case you guys didn't realize this. When you have a habit, every time you do that habit, there's something that cues the action, and there's some kind of reward that you get. And whether it be a psychological, emotional, physical, taste, could be something that you get that positively reinforces that action. So you keep doing it again because you want that reward. So the idea of changing your habits, if you want to change your habit, is first you have to identify the cue. And I'll give myself an example. So my normal morning routine is get up in the morning. We talked about this before. I get up in the morning, do some social media stuff, and then I pour myself a cup of coffee. And I have about a half an hour, 45 minutes where I do some stretching, mobility. I listen to an audiobook, and I just kind of have some quiet time to kind of set myself up for the day. Now, I used to do that, drinking a cup of coffee, and about a month and a half, about 2 months ago, I decided that because I'm in the health and fitness field, I experiment with lots of different things. So I was experimenting with what my body's response would be to coffee anymore. The minute I stopped drinking coffee, I could not keep that morning routine going. Mm-hmm. And I realized that morning routine was more about the reward I got from drinking the coffee than it was my need or desire to have quiet time and do that introspection and listen to that audiobook. The minute I took the coffee out, my alarm clock would go off, I do some social media, and then just lay in bed and be like, whatever. And like, I should probably get up and do what I was doing, but I didn't have, it just wasn't there. I didn't have the desire because I had taken the reward from that way. So then I have to identify something else that is going to get me to do that and plug something else in that's going to give me reward that I can then repeat and build on. So I'm sure we probably all have something similar. Jason, do you have anything like that you can relate?
That's a really cool case study. I've never thought about that. So something in my life I can tell you, I have a history of drug abuse. And, the thing I usually tell people with drug addicts is, well, one, drugs work. They're wonderful for changing your feeling states.
Yeah.
And to your point, there was a long period of my life where they worked, right? Life was going well. There weren't many consequences, occurring as a result of me getting high. And then gradually certain consequences start to show up in my life. And now I'm at a crossroads where I can either continue these behaviors, which feel good, but at a certain point, they also start to feel bad because now they're kind of it's almost like this balancing act. Like the experience of using the substances in and of itself was a pleasurable experience, but then the consequences that I created as a result of choosing to use them would create some sort of negative experience. Like, for example, my boss threatening to fire me, right, and having no income. If there's no income, how am I going to buy drugs? As just an example. So, you know, it's a very not only is it challenging, was it challenging for me to change my behaviors around substance abuse, but I couldn't do it alone. Like, I tried multiple times trying to do this stuff by myself, and I needed to get help from many people as a team to get me to gradually change my habits. Um, and to your point, like in your example with the coffee, once I didn't have the drugs, I basically, it was like I had set my life up to, the reward was the drug. Like, everything I was doing was a consequence of like the drug's effect, essentially. So when I removed the drug from my life, now, like, even the most basic routines like exercise, for example, went away. Getting up to go to work on time went away. And it was almost like I had to relearn how to be an adult without the substances.
Yeah.
So that was like a tough, I don't know.
That's a, and that's a sweeping, that's one aspect that affects your whole life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll use me for example, since we're getting personal about stuff. I got divorced at the beginning of the year, and I have had to relearn a lot about living as an adult by myself without having back and forth with someone, without having reaction and shared responsibilities and all the things that come with being in a daily consistent relationship with somebody. So the habits had to, again, like you said, you had to relearn how to live your life without drugs. I had to learn to relive my life without a spouse. So those are two, I think, large examples that are fairly obvious that people need to think about and address. And there may be some guys listening who have been through a divorce that understand what that's like, or have had drug or alcohol issues, or smoking is another one that may understand what that's like. Jimmy, do you have anything that's small, maybe something that you've had in your life that you realize, hey, I didn't realize I was doing this? It wasn't like a sweeping, life altering thing, but maybe just some little thing. Whether it could even be something that's just, I'm doing an exercise and realize I'm doing this thing I didn't realize I was doing, and why. You probably see a lot of stuff on the physical side, the physiological side, doing physical therapy, where people have a movement that they're doing. We're going to relate this to fitness style. People have a movement that they're doing something incorrect in that movement because they didn't know, or they just developed a habit, and then it caused problems.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I just going into something that's again, those were deep, and I thank you guys for sharing. Again, it takes being vulnerable to be able to open up and be able to say that to the crowd. But on a lighter level, on a different level, I mean, I'm just going to pick my background. I'm going to go more into like the athlete side. As an athlete, you train hard. And, when it comes down to, say, food nutrition, there are times when, I've chosen to do a really hard workout so I can have something that's not quote unquote healthy for me at the end of my workout. So I can go out and I can have Cinnabons, or I can go to get pizza,
What's wrong with Cinnabons?
But I'm just
awesome.
I mean, it's kind of like, oh, there's your reward for kicking your own butt. It's like, it's kind of like that, where, all right, I'm going to do a 2-hour workout and I'm going to crush myself. Is this quote unquote the best thing for me at the time? Probably not. But I want to have, fill in the blank, when it comes down to whatever intake it is. And then we all do it. We all do it.
I want to jump in and interject there. So, it's not just the Cinnabon afterwards that you're rewarding yourself with, but there's also a mental picture. We're talking about mindset and mental picture.
Right.
You had a mental picture in your head that you needed to work out 2 hours at a time to see progress. You needed this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Even though logically you probably knew this isn't good for me.
Yeah.
Because of the picture of where you wanted to be and the vision you had of what was expected of you for whatever reason or whatever that may be,
Right.
that was your reward, your emotional reward of I kicked my ass,
Yeah.
which was in your mind a good thing.
Right. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you
And
accomplished something, even though it may
exactly.
not have been
Right.
healthy.
It might have crushed me for, 3 days with my CNS and, not giving the adequate time to heal, but I was able to reward myself very shortly after, by giving myself something sweet. It just drops that dopamine rush right into your brain so that you feel like, oh yeah, okay, this is good. All right, I need to go ahead and kick my butt so I can give myself this afterwards. And people do that, and people like play a game with themselves. Again, it's very light. It's a lighter sense when it comes down to it. And, most of us tend to do it instead of listening to our body, listening to, our mentors, our guidance, say, okay, is that really necessary? Is that something that you really need to be doing? And then rewarding it with something that, is not quote unquote healthy.
Right. Yeah. That's a common thing is people associate, this is a whole rabbit hole we could probably, with the work more, eat less concept mindset and things like that. But there's a lot of I guess there's a lot of expectations around fitness and exercise that the harder you work, the better it is. And changing that message and changing that picture, people said that it's the smarter you work, the better it is. That doesn't necessarily mean you're always kicking your butt.
Right.
A whole different picture in that realm of discussion. All right, cool. What are some tips that you guys have on helping people change habits? We've talked about identifying what they are, how they can impact your life. What are some ideas we can give guys on how do you change a habit?
So I think a lot on a practical side of things now, scheduling time into your calendar for the exploration, for the journey that we've kind of like talked about. So maybe somebody listening to this, maybe when they block out an hour of their schedule today, maybe all they're doing in that time is sitting there with a journal and free flowing their thoughts out on this paper, trying to sort of discover what is really important to them. And maybe that's all that person's doing. Maybe somebody else is further along in their development. They've already given some time and thought to that, but they don't have a plan. Well, maybe they're writing out a plan of some sort. Or maybe someone's created a part of a plan. Like, I want to eat better, but I don't have the food I need in my house to do it. Okay. You block out time in your day for an hour. You go to the grocery store with your list. You buy the things that you intended to buy, and you're one step closer to creating a new habit around the goal. And by the same token, maybe the person's already involved, and now they're going to spend their hour today doing some sort of meal prep so that they have things prepared to make it convenient for them to start, repeating these habits.
Yeah.
So scheduling, I think, is huge.
Okay. For me, I think probably two things. One, I agree scheduling, but that goes into my bigger piece. I think for me is write it down. Right. Once you've identified, hey, these are the things I want to change, you need to write it down. You need to put a plan in place. That involves scheduling. That involves how long like, I'm going to make this small change. I'm going to do that for 3 weeks. I'm going to make this change and build on it. Like whatever it may be, write it. If it's not written down to me, if you're not writing things down and visualizing what you're going to do, then it's just a pipe dream in your head. Right. It's a dream in your head. It's a vision when you write it down. Right. It's a mission. It's a goal when you write it down. So that's one thing. I think definitely writing it down is key. The other thing is, I actually am thinking of two more things. The other thing is start small, and I think I kind of mentioned that is don't try to change a habit that is going to completely disrupt your whole life overnight. Find something that's small that you can digest, that you can assimilate and insert into your routine without completely disrupting everything, and then do that for a while, and then you can add to that. You can build on that success and identify something else and then work on that. That's part of that, writing things down. Don't try to just change everything. Don't say, hey, I'm going to get in shape. I haven't been going to the gym at all, but I'm now go to the gym 5 days a week. I'm going to prep my meals twice a week. I'm going to go get a massage every Saturday. Like, just one little thing at a time and build on it. And then lastly, I think find someone to be accountable with, right? Share it with your spouse, share it with a friend, share the habit, the goal, whatever it is that you're wanting to do, and ask them for their support. I need you to keep me accountable. If you see that I'm not doing this, please hold me accountable and get my butt to do it, because I need the help. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm not used to doing it, and I need to build that habit. I need some support and backing from you, whoever you may be, to help me maintain it. So I think that's probably a big thing, is share it, have a community, you can share it with somebody.
And to your point, the length of time it takes to create these new habits it's sort of irrelevant. Like the most, this is a lot about fitness, right? So the most common example would be, let's say somebody wanted to lose 5 pounds. Okay, some people might be able to do that in a month. Some people might be able to do it in 6 months. Who
Right.
cares? Like as long as you're taking time to do what you mentioned, Bronson, where you're slowly making changes and you're consistently identifying those things and being held accountable with your team. It doesn't matter if somebody is getting the 5 pounds gone in a few weeks and then it took this other person, a year to do.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. What we got, Jamie?
I mean, everything that you guys said was kind of like you guys kept like checking the boxes off as
Yeah,
you
I
guys
didn't mean to steal
Now,
everything.
let me
from
just
you,
add another thing to what you said. But what I would actually recommend is, again, just like we said, taking responsibility and taking accountability. So doing an exercise where, if you guys can picture this, take out a blank piece of paper, you draw a circle, and you draw like a line through it, okay, vertically, horizontally, and almost like spokes on a wheel, right? And then you just write at, on the outside what those spokes mean. Like, say it might be a category of your life: business, spiritual or religion, friends, family, fitness, nutrition, whatever it is. And then you rate it for 0 is like, all right, my energy in this area is either I give nothing or I give 10. And then you rate it from that scale, and you just jot down what each of these areas of your life, where your energy is going, and getting an idea of a baseline. And just identify where you are. A lot of people just want to shoot everywhere. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this. So what happens is that we get scattered, or we get so laser focused is that everything else you forget about. Case in point, that's what happens with me. Is like when I have something that I'm focused on, so it becomes my daily habit, I get laser focused, and then a lot of things outside of this area, I start to lose track of. And then that starts to actually unwind a lot of things. So having balance in life. Again, if you're putting so much energy into weight loss and you're not putting it into your friends and family, that's another way for you to work on being holistic and being grounded and supported. If you're not giving any energy to the people that help support you, but you're calling upon them when you might be in the trenches, they're not going to be there for you. So like again, look at your life at the moment in a snapshot, because everybody, gets so fixated on the goal, but like take a moment, see where we are now today, rate where these areas are based on your energy. If you need to spend more time here, so that when I say a bike wheel, it should look like a circle, right? It shouldn't look like this jagged, it shouldn't look like a snowflake.
Right.
We're all unique snowflakes in the world.
Hey, don't call me a snowflake.
Hey, it's just an analogy. Okay. So just thinking about that, like that's something that we, again, as men, looking at this as a male platform to really voice like, where we are is be balanced in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Again, having habits, yes, is definitely going to be something that helps you, but being balanced, don't put all the energy into one thing, but then you're missing everything else, so
Okay.
that's what I recommend.
Cool. All right, guys, I appreciate the time. I think that's a lot of good information for this session. We have one more session, right? We only got 6 sessions we're doing here. So we got one more session next week. And we're talking more specifically, this is probably the most specific we've gotten on health and nutrition. Like we're talking about boosting your metabolism. So we're going to talk about what your metabolism is, how it affects you, and things that you can do to increase your metabolism. It probably doesn't mean what you think it means. So keep that in mind when we talk about that next week. Dun, dun, dun. I appreciate the time, guys. Take it easy, and we'll see you next week.
All right, guys. Take care. Be safe. Happy Christmas. Happy holidays.
Christmas. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
yes. See you next week.